Okay, hello everyone. So today we're joined by David Boultbee, the artist behind Beacons Project. Hello, David.
Yeah.
And we've also got some of our lovely Lancaster Arts volunteers with us today who are going to be asking David some questions about the project. So I don't know who wants to go first, but yeah, jump in with the questions.
I think I'll jump in. I guess what most excites you about the Beacons Project?
I think several things. I mean, overall, it's an opportunity to work in somewhere that I haven't worked before. It's always really interesting to visit new places. In a way, it's the best part of what I do. Work with new people, meet new people, make new contacts and connections. I've done quite a lot of work in Morecambe, but I haven't worked. I've done some work at Light Up Lancaster, but I haven't actually worked at the campus before. So that's great. Also, it's an opportunity to try out new ideas, and it's been great working with the Lancaster Arts team. What's really nice about a commission like this is that it quite often commissions you write a proposal in response to a brief, and then you're kind of quite bound to it, which has its advantages, but it also means that as you kind of get to know the project and the project team better and the site better, there's less room for adaptation along the way. Whereas with this, the project is, because of the way it's being commissioned, it's really grown out of our visiting the campus, talking to people, discussing the project, which means that we've been able to do something which we really think is like the best project, for this time and for this place. And it's the best way to work it, and so it's super exciting to have that opportunity.
And based on the first part of your answer there, what inspires you to work with people and communities to create artworks that explore and engage with places and spaces?
I think it's really important that artworks reflect what a place is about. And I think the temptation as an artist is to go in and sort of not assume that you know, but kind of make the artwork about your reflection of that place and how you respond to it. And my sense is that risks being a bit dull, because who cares what I think about the campus? What matters is like the people who use and inhabit the campus daily, and I think that's absolutely critical. And my experience of working in this way is that the magic and the ideas is generated from these kinds of conversations and visiting somewhere, and sort of understanding why people are there and what they think about it, and then the artwork can reflect that. I think that's kind of a much more engaging way to work. It's certainly a lot more fun from my point of view. And I think I'm always really struck, because I visit a lot of places. I've said this to Danny previously. Even places that when you explore them from a kind of a creative point of view, when you're researching a project, you look at them in an entirely different way, and you notice details in we walked through the spine looking for railings that were sort of 3 or 4 stories high, because they were kind of nice candidates for where we might position the speakers for the project. So you're looking at the space in a totally different way than the way you would if you were just normally traversing it. You're forced to look up. When you look up, you see all the things that maybe people don't necessarily they're not trying to hide them from you, but they're not things that are kind of part of the sort of the architectural kind of language of the space, for example. And you see the sky behind the buildings, you see the sunset, you see it getting dark, and all these bits. And I'm always really struck that you can notice yourself how your relationship with somewhere changes. If you think back to like when you first arrived at campus, and you arrive with sort of there's like an emotional sense attached to that feeling, and you kind of tie that to maybe places, or like the first time you drove up the hill, or the first time you arrived on Spine, or and then when you look at it now and it's somewhere which you know well and which you've regularly inhabited, or you're still on campus, your feeling about that place is totally different. And I don't know, I just find that fascinating. I think there's something really interesting in that. So a lot of what I do is about trying to create these kind of unexpected encounters in places, so that people are almost like, forced sounds a bit oppressive, but strongly encouraged to like slow down and take that moment in the space and do something, or see something, or experience something in that space that they wouldn't do normally. and then and can then kind of share some of that changing feeling about somewhere.
Yeah, I really like the idea about that, currently a lot of students, a lot of people are stuck in one place, more or less, because of the whole pandemic, and just art or just the change of perspective can really help to see the place and spaces in different approach. And I just wanted to ask, why did you choose students as your co-workers and as the main audience of this artwork for Beacons?
I mean, it's the obvious thing to do at a university, right? Is obviously a big part of it. But I think beyond that, I think that especially at the moment, I mean, this work is kind of in some way about kind of the COVID situation, but we didn't want to go down the route of kind of like what are becoming almost like the standard responses to COVID, and about sort of isolation and restriction, and we wanted to make it, in a way I think maybe more authentic, and really talk about, I don't know, looking forward and sort of light at the end of the tunnel, and really reflect what people felt about the campus in relation to the current situation, as opposed to any, what we can't do, or sort of the politics or fear, or the confusion, about the situation. It felt a much more worthwhile thing to do, and kind of much more interesting to investigate, really. And then I think that sentiment can then be kind of translated to any time, really, when you're away from somewhere for whatever reason. I think it's maybe got a bit more longevity than just being a reflection of 2020 and
And new approaches to making art have the restrictions imposed, and the pandemic has encouraged maybe to take some new ways of doing what, the whole creation process maybe changed.
Honestly, not a great deal. I mean, obviously, when we've had to meet on Zoom, maybe a bit more than we might have previously, but we'd always video conference, because it's a couple of hours round trip from Manchester, where I am, up to Lancaster. So, we're sort of already kind of looking, that sort of stuff. Obviously, we've had to be kind of, aware of kind of COVID safe working when we've been on site and working together. But any project comes with restrictions. Whatever you do, there's always things to think about around public safety and accessibility and practicality and scheduling and budgets. And so this has kind of had some restrictions that we maybe haven't encountered before, and obviously we've had to be quite agile, because the situation's moved so quickly, and it's kind of a constant moving target. But I think we've really seen that as being just another thing that needs to be considered in the context of this project. I've done loads of projects with unusual restrictions on the sides of hills, or in water and sea, or everything's got its quirks and something which is unusual or different. So I think it just fits into there, really. I always think it's better to try and crack on with things, and not feel hard done by the things that you can't do, but focus on the things that you can do, and frankly the opportunities it creates. I sometimes think, like, when if you could do anything, if you had like an unlimited amount of time and unlimited amount of money, you probably wouldn't do anything, because you wouldn't know what to do. You'd have absolutely nothing to frame your thoughts. So I prefer to see these things much more as being things that force you to be kind of innovative, and to kind of and to think through better approaches to these things. More fun.
I think it's great to find something so positive and like such a difficult time when we're facing so many challenges. And do you think there's something that you learned throughout the pandemic that you would like to apply to your art in the future that under normal circumstances you would not have encountered?
I think from my point of view, I've been very fortunate through the pandemic, and I'm really conscious of this. But I have been able to continue working. I've had work through it, and it hasn't had professionally, and particularly in my creative life, it hasn't really had a massive impact. I think that I'm constantly reminded of how fortunate I am to be, able to say that and be in that position. I think it's far from everybody's experience. It's huge good fortune and a massive privilege. I guess really, pandemics come at the same time as Brexit, right? As well, and I think what I'm really minded to is this overarching sense of kind of polarization and sort of binary viewpoints in, particularly in the UK, and obviously I haven't been able to be out of the UK for the last year or so. But everybody, there seems little appetite at the moment to talk about grey areas, and I tend to see everything in terms of spectrums. Nothing is black and white ever. But yet everything seems to, at the moment, there seems to be a pressure to distill everything into a binary debate. So you're either pro or anti-Brexit, or you're, you think the government's done not enough to protect lives, but it's just concentrated on the economy. And the thing is, none of these things are straightforward, and there's no real right or wrong answer. I'm just really conscious of that. I think that's maybe that's become something I've become very aware of during the last year. And I think it's something that I'll like to sort of look at creating some work around. Maybe sort of in the next few years, I'll sort of begin to distill into something which, might evolve into, something that underpins narrative of some stuff, just to sort of, to try and, emphasize spectrums and the importance of spectrums.
So now you talked about some maybe new concepts and ideas that you have maybe will be planning to work on later. I wanted to ask regarding this project, is this project more of what you have been doing earlier, or is it more distinctive from what you usually do and with like collaborating with other people? Artwork.
Sorry, can you say that last bit again?
Is it common for you to collaborate with other people and audiences and work with, I don't know, maybe students, and in this approach that this project is about, or is it more distinctive from your previous artworks?
Well, I guess two things. In terms of working with other people and with groups and kind of co-developing work in that way, that's kind of a really essential part of what I do. And I think that I find it fairly obvious to me that my better what that I'm most proud of is the work that's kind of come out of a collaborative process that seems to have most value and the sort of the strongest narrative and sit best in the spaces where it was created. So either kind of immediately co-developing something, or developing something from a kind of a period of working with people to kind of get to that point. So that's that's not new. That's something which I will I can't work in another way really. I think it's crucial really, in some way, shape or form. I think the other thing is that ideas don't just kind of appear and then disappear at the end of a project. Really, any project, it's much more like there's lots of waves of ideas going on, and at any one time, like a project lands at a point when those waves intersect in a certain way. So, I think there's things in this project which are things which I've kind of explored previously, and things which you know, I will kind of take from this period of exploration and move into future work. But they do all sort of, in some way, sort of sit together, but sometimes have to look backwards to see that synergy. And of course, what happens is that they all intersect at different ways at different times. So you end up with a, you know, with a unique piece of work, which is sort of special for this project. But it kind of, like a project, kind of captures that intersection of time.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the Beacons project is doing that, even having this conversation on Zoom in the middle of a pandemic, still trying to make something happen. It feels very, yeah, of the time, and we don't know yet how people might want to interact with the project, but there's something really, yeah, honest and kind of present about what it's trying to do now. We've had a great question come through from Zoe, one of the volunteers who's not able to come today, but she says, pass on my admiration for his conception of such an inspirational project and transforming it into something great. This will make the campus seem more alive these days, and I know that the students there have the need to feel less alone and more involved in something. So in response to that, part of that is a question. She said, do you feel like it's an artist's responsibility to act in kind of the current situation that we're in? And is Beacons almost like an answer to this darkness right now? Big questions.
Big questions, yeah. Well, I mean, that's very kind of to put it that way, but I think it also kind of illustrates really where this project is, because I mean, it's been originated as you know, part of, you know, a series of fairly intensive team discussions kind of between, you know, between a lot of people, and I think that's probably why the project, you know, now feels kind of quite strong and settled and appropriate, because it's emerged from that kind of collaborative process and from being present in the space to see it. Is it an artist's responsibility to respond to this sort of time? I mean, that kind of cuts to the core of the purpose of art, doesn't it? And I'm not sure I can. I can only kind of speak for me. I suppose I feel that my work isn't overtly political. Not because I don't think work should be or can't be, just that that's not really where I find myself speaking from. I feel I deal much more with feelings about places and relationship to space. So I suppose, you know, in that way, I'm not sure that I do feel that necessarily there's a responsibility to respond. What I do think is that if you do respond, then I think, you know, I wouldn't criticize anybody for doing that in any way, if that is where your work comes from. The only responsibility is to make decent art and do it well and make stuff that has a purpose and that people respond to. I think that's where the responsibility lies. And is Beacons part of an answer to a darkness? Yeah, hopefully.
You've got to say yes. You're biased.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I think it's part of the response, though, right? And I think it's maybe more. I think the artwork itself is maybe, you know, it isn't really that, but it's more what that evokes in people, which is the response and kind of what's important maybe. So, you know, the artwork in itself, you know, watching some folk on the top of some buildings or some loud areas, you know, isn't going to change anything in itself. But if experiencing that has some kind of effect on, you know, how you feel about or how one feels about a particular campus, or you know, whether they're there to witness it or they see it remotely through the recording, or they just know that their message is being sent to the campus and there's that connection, then yeah, hopefully that has some elements as an effect. It's never going to be, you know, it's never going to be be the solution. It can only be, you know, something that maybe, you know, in a small way contributes to that.
Great. Well, has anyone got any burning last questions before we let David go?
I just wanted to ask maybe, do you have any plans for the future? Are you any plans regarding, you know, some other projects?
Well, at the moment, I've got another 2 projects on the go. I'm doing a program in Blackburn called the Creative Accelerator, where we're working with early career stage artists to help them develop professional skills around creative practice. Because I think so often creative practice at art school is about kind of creative expression. Obviously, pretty critical part of creative practice. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes with that, which we kind of touched on a bit when we talk about practicalities. You know, things like, you know, risk assessments, doing your accounts, applying for projects, running projects, marketing. You know, all these other bits that have to support what it is that you do, but kind of usually you just have to learn on the go. So that program's about sort of trying to help these kind of early stage artists kind of get some experience around that and develop their practice more effectively. And I'm also doing a project with the National Media Museum in Bradford. We did a project last year called Sonic Futures, which looked at the work of Delia Derbyshire. I don't know if you know, but she is one of the like really early pioneers of electronic music. And she worked at the BBC in a department called the Radiophonic Workshop. And this was before electronic music really existed. And they used to record everything on tape and then string up the tape and slow it down and speed it up and cut it, like physically cut it, sellotape it back together again to make loops and samples. And she wrote, well, she did the she didn't write the music, but she did the sound production for the Doctor Who theme tune.
All right.
Which is like really interesting. Excuse me. So, and she used a lot of everyday objects to create these samples. So we made a machine that allowed you, which is like an online machine, which allows you to look at, play with the sounds of everyday objects. And then it makes rhythms based on everyday spaces. So it takes a photograph, finds the lines in the photograph and uses that to make a rhythm. And then you can use your sounds within that to create your own loops. And it's online, so you can be making your loops and then somebody can join you in that, either next to you or like on the other side of the world. And you can jam together with the instrument. So we're looking to carry that on this year as part of an exhibition which will take place at the museum later this year, is the plan's current plan. That's quite exciting too.
Oh. That sounds great.
Lots going on.
Yeah, you are busy. Great. Okay, well, we'll leave it there. Thanks.